welcome to The Audible presented by Trader Joe's. I'm Stuart Mandel, joined right now by Ralph Russo. Bruce Feldman will be joining us later, though when it was recorded was earlier. Ralph and I are hitting you up right after the first college football playoff rankings come out. Later with Bruce, we will do our picks, talk a little bit Auburn coaching candidates. But first, Ralph, it's back. It's that time of year where we first find a way to watch ESPN that isn't, pirated. And then we watch Joey Galloway and Greg McElroy or Reese Davis. Greg McElroy said on the show, "Hey, I don't really have any problem with this. I didn't either, but I hear you have a gripe."
I do. I try not to make too much of this, and which is, again, maybe not the best podcasting. Maybe I need to be more fired up about it. But every head-to-head mattered except Notre Dame and Miami. That was every other head-to-head. They had Texas, they had Oklahoma. They even had Virginia at like 14, and Virginia is like barely a top 30 team. But, again, the Cavaliers are playing great, so you got to give them the recognition because of the way, they're winning games.
They beat Louisville, so they're above Louisville.
And they're one above Louisville. So it just sort of like, and then for Notre Dame to be 10 and Miami to be 18th, it just seemed a little strange, a little recency bias. Louisville and SMU are not bad teams. Those were very close games. It just struck me as, I don't know. It just struck me as being a little harsh on Miami, considering, they beat Notre Dame. Like, it's just, I don't know. If I was a Miami fan, I shouldn't say this because Miami fans are just generally fired up anyway these days. But if I was a Miami fan, I would feel a little slighted right now to be so buried after a team I beat is now in the field.
I was actually a little surprised Reese didn't ask him about that on the show. Mac Rhodes, the chairman, but kind of knowing the process, having been through that mock, my guess is if they're that far apart, they were never actually considered like up against each other, right? Like you the way it works is they vote on like, okay, what's the next tier of teams that we're going to compare next to each other? But if they're that far apart, they may have never even been in the same discussion. Now you could say either Notre Dame was too high or Miami too low if they weren't in the same bucket, right, to begin with. But yeah, head-to-head is supposed to be a tiebreaker if the teams are close. And they're saying, we don't think these teams are close. And I think they're saying that because it was the first game of the season. Some teams get better, some teams get worse. Notre Dame, they think, has gotten better, and Miami has clearly gotten worse. And maybe it's Carson Beck's interceptions. Maybe they just think you shouldn't have lost those games if you're, but I think they're taking into account the progression of the season. I will say, even though I've said all along, I think Notre Dame, if they went out, they're in, right? Ever since they were 0-2. I'm not sure there's a convincing case to be made, though, why they are the highest ranked 2-loss team. I mean, what's they have a one top 25 win against USC. So what's the justification that they're above Oklahoma, who has 2? I would even say maybe you would even throw Texas into that group, like in any number of these other 2-loss teams that have more than just USC on their resume.
Well, they did, Mac Rhodes mentioned this on the show. They have a new metric involved. I also am wondering if they're leaning into any other numbers. Like, they don't use like an SP plus or a power ranking, right? But they do have a bunch of other numbers in there, relative scoring, relative this, relative that. I mean, if anything, if you talk to some of the numbers crunchers, they'll tell you they have too many numbers, right? They should be more efficient with the numbers and the statistics that they have. Because I think you brought up a good point too, like Utah at number 13, Utah's a team that the computers really love. Iowa is unranked in the AP poll. And you can just say, well, the poll voters are wrong. But Iowa was number 20 here, and their overall resume doesn't necessarily look wonderful, but the computer rankings and the power rankings sort of warm up to Iowa. So I don't know exactly how they're getting there in terms of exactly what numbers they are looking at to make those conclusions. but it does seem like there is a little more leaning into the teams that the computers like. And I only say that because the computers really like Notre Dame too, right? So that could sort of justify justify why Notre Dame is 10, and then you have Miami descending, so that justifies that evaluation too.
Notre Dame is number 7. And just to clarify, the committee uses their own metrics that are developed by this company, Sports Source Analytics, and they do not publicize them, which I think is a real shame. I've been barking at them for 10 years. Why don't you publish your metrics? So because they don't, we end up citing FPI or any Austin Mox numbers on the Athletic, and that's not actually what they're looking at. It's best we can do. But on SP Plus, Notre Dame is number 7. In FPI, Notre Dame is, I just had it in front of me. Notre Dame is 5th in FPI. Miami in that one is 12th. So you can see where they get that. The one he did mention specifically was Oregon. Oregon is number 6 in the AP poll, number 9 in the committee rankings. And they said they have the lowest strength of record, Oregon does, of any of their top 10 teams. I am a fan of them incorporating these numbers, Ralph, and I know you probably are too. And I was very encouraged to see them. They have a high opinion of Utah, who has just beats the crap out of people. And then they have the 2 losses, but the 2 losses are to BYU and Texas Tech, who are in the top 10. In BYU and Texas Tech, it should be noted, they have number 7 and number 8. So when we talked with Bruce on Sunday about, hey, what would it possibly take to get 2 teams from the Big 12 in? I think you see it right there. There's your blueprint. Like, both BYU and Texas Tech are high enough now that if they do split, like we talked about, like, I think they're probably both going to get in.
Yeah, and it doesn't even matter like when the split is. Like I wrote that up in a column that's probably going to post now. It's kind of a newser with some analysis at the bottom with a whole bunch of different scenarios for each conference. And really, the only scenario or the main scenario for the Big 12 is it revolves around Texas Tech and BYU splitting. I think it would probably not be good if one team swept either, especially with Texas Tech already having a loss. So sweeping is not good, but if they can get those 2 teams to split, I think you've got a path. I think the other thing I try to stress to people when I talk about this stuff is like, it's a barometer more than a thermometer, the rankings to a certain degree, right? It's where are you and where are you heading is probably more important than where you actually are ranked, right? Like we talked about Oregon even before we started, and they're at number 9. Well, that's not great. That means if you lose a game, oh my gosh, now you're on the bubble. Oregon's got 4 very good teams left. Well, 4 good teams ranging in quality left on the schedule, but they're all good, right? They have 4 good teams left. Oregon will be fine if Oregon takes care of business, right? Like they'll probably move up even if they go 3-1.
What if Oregon drops one? What if Oregon loses at Iowa this week, but then later beats USC and Washington?
Yeah, and even Minnesota is like pretty good. Again, they're not ranked, but they're pretty good. Like, no, yeah, I think all it would do, Oregon next week,
Really?
it wouldn't. What's that? Really who? Really what?
Wait, where are you getting Minnesota's very good from?
No, pretty good. They're okay. Like they're 6-3. Like again, they're not nothing, right? It's not like they've got Rutgers, right? I mean, they've already played Rutgers. But
That
what
is
I'm
such
saying
a
is,
PJ Fleck. Like you turn around, they're 6-3, and you go, "Wait, where did that come from?"
yeah,
Sorry
exactly.
for the Minnesota tangent there.
No, that's okay. Because Minnesota sitting there with 6 wins is a little startling because it is. They're just always around that total. But right, like so if Oregon loses this week, right, there's going to be some panic in Eugene. Well, panic, but it's going to feel not great in Eugene next week when they are ranked 13th. Right? But there's plenty of runway for Oregon to get back in. It also brings up our fun team, Utah, sitting there at 13. The fact of the matter is, I don't see how the Utes are moving up, right? Like they're or at least not enough relative to the competition, where Oklahoma has Alabama still on the schedule and Texas still has Georgia and Texas A&M on the schedule. So clearly those teams have an easy path to move up. Whereas Utah, this might be about as good as it gets for the Utes.
Why don't we take a quick break? And when we come back, I've got a couple more thoughts on the rankings. I'm sure you do as well. And we're back. A couple more things, Ralph. First of all, we talked about Texas over the weekend and the possibility of a 9-3 Texas if they can win one of these two top 5 games they have coming up. And I think what we saw from the committee tonight is, yes, absolutely, they could. They are the first team out right now at 7-2. They're number 11. The only reason that doesn't get them in is because the highest ranked ACC team, Virginia, is 14th. And there is no group of 5 team in the top 25 right now to be ranked, but we know they will get a spot. I don't know. It's like you said, it's a blueprint, but
I'm sorry to cut you off, Stu, but they did say Memphis would be the highest ranked team, right? So they filled out a bracket during the show to just show you that even though they're not in the top 25, Memphis would be the highest ranked group of 5 team, hence getting into the playoff. Just wanted to fill that in for the listeners.
It's bad luck. Memphis beats Arkansas. Oh, what a big deal. Arkansas is terrible. USF beats Florida in Florida. Oh my gosh, amazing win. Florida's 3-5. Just that year that Cincinnati beat Notre Dame and Notre Dame ended up going 11-1, that just does not happen usually. Well, can we agree that if they're, whether it's Texas or somebody else, let's just say a 9-3 SEC team, the conference that's probably going to come at the expense of, we always thought it would be the Big 12. It sure looks like it's the ACC, which has, like I said, no team right now after last weekend's carnage in the ACC. No team ranked higher than Virginia at 14. Louisville is 15. Virginia beat Louisville during the season. Georgia Tech is 17. Miami is 18. The only thing I would see as a sign of respect for the ACC is that Pitt made the top 25. They are number 24. They are unranked in AP. Not a great sign for that conference.
No, and I think if you also look again, like the sort of where you are and where you're going, it's hard to sort of see like, okay, which of these 2 teams could win out and set up, a launching pad ACC championship game that sets up 2 teams to get in. Now, again, I thought Miami could still be that team, even though they're almost locked out of the ACC championship game. It seemed to me that Miami could win out, say, hey, we beat Notre Dame, we beat USF, maybe USF gets in, right? Because USF still has a good chance to win the American. And hey, look, Louisville won the ACC and we only lost to that team by 3. So that gives maybe Louisville and Miami a chance to get in, but they're so far back now. And Miami doesn't have a ton left on its schedule to sort of propel it. So, Georgia Tech with Georgia sitting there, maybe that's a path for them to get, like Georgia Tech finishes 11-1, beats Georgia, loses the ACC championship game. There's your road to 2 possibly ACC teams, but it's a little trickier with the ACC teams to see what the path is to getting like that big championship game that produces 2 teams.
I know it seems like Miami is far out right now. I don't really think it is. You've got 4 weeks to climb 6, maybe 7 spots if you go 10-2. And while you're doing that, these teams above them are going to thin out. Like amongst Georgia Tech, Virginia, Louisville, right? They're not all going to win out. I think, do any of them play each other? There's not many of those crossover games left.
I think Louisville
Georgia
Tech. Yeah, Duke is actually, the funny thing is Duke has as good a chance of getting to the ACC championship game as anybody else, and they're not even ranked. Pitt is also a factor here because Pitt plays Georgia Tech and Miami and Notre Dame, by the way. Pitt could be the ultimate spoiler here.
I misspoke a second ago. Louisville plays SMU, who is also in the mix, even though they're unranked. And Pitt plays Georgia Tech. Too. But regardless, yeah, teams are going to fall. Like Miami, if they keep winning, and Georgia Tech too, are going to, Vanderbilt going to lose again, right? They're number 16. Wouldn't surprise me if Oklahoma loses a game or 2, So the next thing you know, it's like, oh, we started out 18th, but wow, 2 weeks later, we're already 13th, And then, like you said, if Georgia Tech beats Georgia, they're gonna jump pretty high up the rankings. So it's not impossible for one of those teams to get in. I think it just kind of depends on, like we said last week, like the best case scenario, honestly, would be Georgia Tech beats Georgia. They're 11-1, and they somehow lose the tiebreaker, and they're not in the ACC title game, and they're done at 11-1, and they're in. And somebody else, Duke, as you said, somebody wins the ACC title in a weird tiebreaker.
Yeah, which in doing some of my scenarios, that could happen also. Like, I was looking at some of the scenarios, like Georgia Tech running the table but getting locked out by a tiebreaker is a very possible thing that can happen because of this. Because of the ACC, because of just ACC.
I miss divisions. I do.
Me too.
I've been saying it all the time. Division, there's a much cleaner system. We said we're going to take the best team in this division and the best team in that division, and they're going to play each other. You said offline that you had a real quick doomsday scenario that the non-SEC fans will not like.
Yeah, the SEC haters, I just think, would go mad, and we'll just wrap it up, I guess, maybe on this one, and that is a 7-team, 7 playoff teams from the SEC. There is a scenario where the SEC could have...
That's not mathematically... I'm sorry, but that's not mathematically possible.
Well, yes, it is, because one of them would be an automatic...
You're telling me that's mathematically possible? The way this happens is if every other power conference only gets one.
Yes. I know it sounds crazy. I understand it sounds crazy. I don't think they could get 7 in. I really don't think they could get 7 in. You'd have to start, like, Indiana would have to lose to, like, Purdue, right? But I think but the point being is you could get to a point where you could have 7 10-2 SEC teams. You could have the 4 big ones, Ole Miss, Georgia, Alabama, and Texas A&M. Those are like the top 4 now. You could have Ohio State, Oklahoma, and Texas also. And then you could have one of Oklahoma and Missouri, and then Texas and Vanderbilt. All of those teams could conceivably finish 10-2. And at that point, right, you're not getting all 7 of them in, but you could conceivably get like 6, I think.
I believe on the latest Austin mock playoff probabilities, Ohio State and Indiana are both like 99%. So I think the Big Ten's at least getting 2. But that means you could still get 6 SEC teams.
Yes.
I think they'll, 5 is very realistic. When these things, when we got to the actual, fake bracket that they put up and there were 4, I thought for a second, I thought really only 4. And of course, it's Texas, like I said, is the first one out. And then Oklahoma is the second one out. So they're right. They're already kind of right on the cusp of that. If Oregon were to follow Bruce's prediction and go 9-3, at that point, maybe the Big Ten only has 2. Like, not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah. I don't think that's my point. Was you're not stretching the imagination to end up with that. Like you would be stretching the imagination to end up with an Indiana or Ohio State getting knocked out of this field. But I don't think you're stretching the imagination to end up with 6, basically the SEC taking up 6 of the 7 at-large spots. And now we're going to get all kinds of...
love that.
All kinds of complaints. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Complaints.
ESPN bias, all that good stuff. If the Big Ten only gets 2 of their 18 teams in the playoff, how many would Tony Petitti then say 28, 24, 28, not enough? We got to make sure we double when we need 32. Something like that. It's not going to happen.
42, 38, it's something like that. Oh man. But yes, highly unlikely, but we can, I don't know if dream is the right word, but we can ponder the possibility.
We can brace for it.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to take a quick break and when we come back. Voila. Bruce will be here. All right. We are back, and through the magic of television, Bruce has graced us with his presence, and also somehow we're all wearing different clothes. That was a real quick change there, Ralph, right after the rankings. Now you can tell which one we did, which part of the show we did first. We are here to talk about our picks for this week. But first, Bruce, since you have joined us, Auburn, now the latest SEC program to fire its coach. Who are we thinking there in terms of possible replacements for Hugh Freeze?
Yeah, Stu, when we last did the podcast on Sunday, it was pretty obvious Hugh Freeze had coached his last game at Auburn. So here we go now. This is the third big job in the SEC that's open, with Florida and obviously LSU out there.
Don't offend Arkansas. They're in there too.
You're right. I said third big job, and I feel like this is number 3 in the pecking order. No matter how dysfunctional LSU may be, it's still seen as a bigger job than Auburn. And now you're sitting here looking at it going, okay, Lane Kiffin could be in play at the other two jobs. Obviously, Florida and LSU could be in play. He turned down this job when Hugh Freeze got it last time. So we don't think there's any chance Lane Kiffin goes, oh yeah, on second thought, I want that job now, which actually looks worse than it did even probably 3 years ago compared to the Ole Miss job. What Ralph and I had reported on Friday that James Franklin was a big target for Virginia Tech, but might be slow playing things because he wanted to see what happened at Auburn and potentially at Florida State. Well, obviously Auburn's open. I don't know if the Tigers would pounce on James Franklin. The couple of the names that I think will be in play, James Franklin certainly one. Another former fired big name coach, Jimbo Fisher, who obviously had worked at Auburn back when he was a quarterback coach. But then I'm going to throw a couple other names at you guys, and they're not at quite as big name jobs. One, John Sumrall from Tulane, but he's an Alabama native. He's coached and played in the SEC, and this is the job I'd always heard he probably would be in play for, more likely than LSU. And then there's a couple others. Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State, done an amazing job there. He was actually an offensive coordinator the last year that Auburn was really any good. It was 2019. I don't know if he's willing to leave ASU, but that would be an interesting one for them. And then all of a sudden you get into that other cluster of good group of 5 head coaches who could be in play. Ralph, you talk to a lot of people too. How do you think this one unfolds?
I think the Sumrall one is interesting here, especially again, if he's not as much in play at the other 2 big SEC spots. It seems like he is destined to end up in the SEC. I hope his team doesn't play his way out of that, because it definitely did seem like Tulane might have been distracted by something last week as they were getting their heads knocked in by UTSA. That happens. That's not necessarily a criticism of Sumrall. That can be a dynamic that sometimes can be problematic for some teams when their coach gets into the pipeline, so to speak. It does seem like Auburn, I would put it to you this way. You know how schools often pivot from we did this one time, so now we're going to do this the next time. Freeze was the big name hire. He's been in the SEC. We feel like we know what we're getting because he had already had success at Ole Miss. Maybe he was a little bit of damaged goods because of how it ended at Ole Miss, and he had repaired his reputation at Liberty. So I wonder if that is maybe not the direction they go now with Jimbo Fisher or James Franklin, and they think, let's see if we can find the next great coach. What if we dip into the coordinator ranks? And again, we've talked about guys like Glenn Schumann from Georgia and Will Stein from Oregon, but maybe also a guy like Sumrall coming up, or even a Kenny Dillingham, which obviously that's a power 4 job, but Kenny is 32 or 33 years old without a ton of experience. That would still be a little bit of let's see what we can do with this young guy kind of hire.
Yeah, I agree with Ralph. I think even Brian Harsin before that, they tried to get these experienced head coaches. Freeze, I guess, had reached a point in his life where he wanted to golf more. So I guess you want to get somebody who's young and up and coming and obsessed with football and obsessed with recruiting, no time for golf. So it might be, Ralph, it might be the right spot maybe for a coordinator like a Schumann or Will Stein. But you could also say like, well, Auburn is an absolute meat grinder. It's a very hard job. I think we can agree with that. I realized they, it wasn't that long ago, 2010, 2013, they won one national championship. They played for another. So that is a potential that program has. That feels so long ago now, really. So much has changed in this sport. So, those are possibilities. I don't really understand. If I'm Kenny Dillingham, I would not leave ASU for that job. I mean, if, I don't know, a year from now, I don't know, who's another big school that might come open at some point. If USC came calling, sure. I don't know that I leave ASU for Auburn, for his alma mater, we should note.
Yeah. And I think Florida State, if that comes open, will probably be looking at a similar pool, though. Let's hold off on Florida State throwing dirt on Mike Norvell. They won last week, and there might be a path, as we've talked about. Yeah, I think so too. And we'll get into that in upsets.
Oh, okay. Great. Good segue, Ralph. Good segue. It is time for picks. Let's update our records first of all. I am holding the lead.
So quick to do that when you're in first place.
Right on the rundown, Ralph. I am 20-11. Ralph is 18-13. Goodness, Bruce. I don't know. There's no way nice not to say this.
What is my record?
After going 0-4 last week, but you did hit your upset with UNC over Syracuse. You are 11-20 against the spread this year. So you are.
I'm the opposite of used to.
You are it's all right. We are the inverse. So you're going to need to have a strong close to the season, or you too might end up like Hugh Freeze or some of these on the prognostication hot seat.
Oh, can I write the candidates list to replace Bruce?
I would love to see that list myself, Ralph.
Oh, trust me, like every AD, I got a list in my drawer. Like you never know. You never know what's going to happen. You may lose your guy. I got a list for both of you.
I know Tennessee fans were always bitter that Phil Fulmer came in and like grabbed Johnny Major's seat right out from under him. Look at Ralph trying to pull a coup right now.
I know. He's trying to get rid of both of us.
I'm not trying. I'm just saying I'm prepared. All I'm saying is I'm prepared.
After all the stuff you've said about Vanini and Ubben, you're really going to pull this on us?
Oh, wow. That is just completely undercutting
number
me.
one on his hot candidates list is Ari.
Ari Wasserman will always have a soft spot for Ari, even though I often want to throw him out of a window.
Problem with trying to hire Ari away from those on three guys is he has quite a hefty buyout. It's like a Maldor type deal or Dan Lanning type deal to try to pry him away from those guys. All right,
let's pick some
big game in the Big 12 this week. BYU at Texas Tech. Texas Tech. So I think BYU is the higher ranked team, right? Because they're undefeated. But Texas Tech at home is a 10.5 point favorite. So Bruce, your redemption tour begins now. Will Texas Tech cover the 10.5?
I do not think so. That's almost too big of a number for me. Look, having a dynamic tight end back definitely helped their offense, and they can run the football. I'm going to say that Texas Tech wins, but not by that much. Ralph, do you agree?
I'm going to go with Texas Tech here. I do think that number is about as big as you would ever want it to be if you were diving in and actually putting money on it. Like, that number is pretty big. I'll take Texas Tech. I think they are like the higher ceiling team. My bigger question is this, Stu. Do you think Cody Campbell can find his way onto the set of game day this weekend when Texas Tech super booster and billionaire Cody Campbell gets to sit next to Nick Saban and do a little tit for tat? Here's why I think the Score Act doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Saw the New York Times did a big Cody Campbell feature on either Sunday or Monday. So I think he is. I'm going to guess that call has already been made. I don't know, from one side to the other. I don't know which one. So last week, similar spot. I said, "Ooh, Utah. That's a big spread. I think you're going to win, but I don't think you're going to beat Cincinnati by that much." And guess what happened? Kicked the living snot out of the Bearcats. So I will say Texas Tech covers the 10.5. I don't want to repeat history there. Okay, to the SEC, Texas A&M, undefeated Texas A&M goes to Mizzou. They are a 7-point favorite, Bruce.
I'm going to take, it's a decent sized number, especially for a road dog, but I'm going to take the Aggies. Just think Mizzou is pretty banged up. And I think that, the Aggies keep rolling along. Ralph, you want to agree with me this time?
No, I'm going to take the other side. So I was there when Matt Zollers essentially stepped in for Bo Pribula when Pribula was injured against Vanderbilt. And I was fairly impressed with Zollers. Now they've gotten a week to get him ready. As a Mizzou is a home dog, getting about 6.5, I think we have, Stu. I'll take those points. Like I think if Pribula plays, the spread is much smaller. Now, not having Pribula is a big deal, but I still think that like the separation between these two teams might not be that great. So I'll take the home dog here.
And I will go with that as well. You know, maybe this is the week A&M stubs its toe. I think it's going to happen at some point. And even if it's not, I could see it being a down to the wire game. Mizzou certainly gave Alabama everything it could handle when they played there a few weeks ago. Might have been a month ago by now. So you can see where this is setting up. Either Bruce is going to look like a genius, or it's going to be a similar to last week.
There's no geniuses on the show, Stu. There's no geniuses on the show.
All right, I think this one's gonna get some interesting responses from the panel here. Oregon, top 6 or 7. Oregon going to Iowa, and Oregon 5.5 at Iowa at Kinnick. Bruce, I think we know what you're going to say because we heard your Oregon prediction the other day.
Yeah, I'm taking the Hawkeyes. Tough place to play, especially in November. Really good defensive team. I'm going with the Hawkeyes outright. Ralph, you want to get on this bandwagon?
No, I'm gonna steer away from you as far as possible because that's been working pretty well so far. I think Iowa has become overrated at being underrated. Like I think that like a lot of people are sort of going where you guys have been going on. Wow, they're being they're not ranked and nobody's giving Iowa enough credit. I'm going to lean into the Ducks here. The power rankings seem to think that Oregon can cover this game, so I'm going to say Oregon's going to cover this.
Yeah, against my better judgment, I will side with Bruce on this one. I've been kind of eyeing this upset for a few weeks now. I hope it doesn't get too trendy by the time the game hits on Saturday. But yeah, I think it's a good spot for Iowa. And I think Oregon is very good. But obviously that win at Penn State turned out to be not as big a deal as we thought. And then there's just been some other spots. I mean, certainly the way they lost at home to Indiana, weird kind of game against Wisconsin. Oregon's very good. They're not as good as last year's team. This is a good upset spot for the Hawkeyes. And a game that is going to involve an interim coach on one side. It's a huge rivalry game. Maybe it doesn't feel quite as huge as usual this year, but LSU going to Alabama. The Tide are a 10.5-point favorite. Bruce, do the Tigers right themselves now that the Brian Kelly, will he or won't he saga is over?
I don't think they're good enough to win this game, or I don't think they're good enough to keep it close for 4 quarters. So give me Alabama.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out if we're going to get the dead tiger bounce here, like we've done with some other interim coaches around the country that, where their teams have played well after a coach has been fired. I can't see it. Alabama also plays very, very well at home. So I'm going to, from what we've written, you think maybe those players would be pretty psyched to not have to play for Brian Kelly. But I don't know. I don't really know if that's going to do it. And I could see like LSU just being like just kind of dysfunctional after a firing like that. So I'll lean into Alabama here and even give up all those points.
So my guess is LSU will be one of those teams that does play better for the interim coach, Frank Wilson, who I think is very popular there. I don't know what the heck happened on defense against A&M, but they are better than that. I don't think necessarily they will get run over like that by Alabama. They will lose, but I will take them to cover the 10.5. So that's where we are on those games. And now, starting with you, Ralph, upset picks.
Yeah, so I'm not looking for my like touchdown underdog here, like I often do, but Clemson is favored over Florida State this week. I think Florida State is actually just better. I know the narrative out of Florida State hasn't been good. And we were just about ready to fire Mike Norvell after he lost to Stanford. Big bounce back last week against Wake Forest. I know Florida State's going on the road, but I really just think Florida State is a better team here. And coming off a little momentum, I'll take the Noles as I think about 2.5 point underdog.
I'm a little surprised by that, Ralph, just because I know how big you are into the advanced stats. And you might have noticed that Clemson, of all the games played last weekend, Clemson had the highest win expectancy of any team that lost.
Let me just say something. I think mostly what I'm rooting for is to have a Sunday where where a big coach doesn't get fired. So just help us out here, Mike. Come on. I know you can do it. I know you can get to the...
You don't believe Michael Alford, take him at his word that he would wait till the end of the season?
No, that is true. That is true. But you
unless you're referring to Dabo. Are you getting on the podcast and predicting Dabo will be there?
Oh, no. What have I done? I hadn't even thought of that. Oh, man. Oh, boy. God.
I think we're there yet.
That's going to suck
Dabo's
on
not
Sunday.
getting fired. Dabo's not getting fired. The only thing, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but he looks more like to be like, this isn't working out. I got to take a break or something. He looked almost like apoplectic after last week.
He did, didn't he? Well, even on the sideline during the game, he looked.
But in the post game too.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was literally the word I used, by the way. And I wrote up a little gamer, like quick gamer off of that, what happened with Clemson. And I used the word, Dabo Swinney was apoplectic, first at his defense and then at the officials, something along those lines.
By the way, there was some unaired footage from the end zone of that play. And it turns out it might actually have been defensive pass interference that we just didn't see because it happened earlier in the play. Anyway, I don't have any problems with your pick. Bruce, what do you got?
I got a game a little off the radar. It is Missouri State having a really nice first year in Conference USA. They're a 7.5 point underdog at Liberty. Liberty under Jamie Chadwell got off to a really bad start this season. Started to get a little bit of momentum. But the Bears have won 3 in a row. Ryan Beard has done a very good job there. I know they're more than a touchdown underdog, but I still have them pulling a big upset here.
That would be a nice story. Missouri State. Who saw that coming? All right. Speaking of good stories, guys. So San Diego State's going to Hawaii. San Diego State now alone in first place in the Mountain West. They're a very good team. And I don't have a great X's and O's reason to give you why I am picking 7-point underdog Hawaii to win, but it might just be this. You remember week 0 when we got on here and we were all excited about Hawaii's kicker, which I'm going to botch, but I'm going to try not to. Kansei Matsuzawa, their Japanese kicker who is nicknamed the Toe. Well, he has gone on to make 21 out of 21 field goals this season. 21 out of 21. When he makes the next, I'm not going to say if, when he makes the next one, it's a little bit of a weird thing because that wouldn't set the record for most field goals in a row or even, basically the nugget is that nobody has finished a season perfect with more than 21 field goals made. So if he retired after that field goal, he would break the record, but he would have to make 3 more after that to break the consecutive field goals. But anyway, 21 out of 21. So I think the Toe takes down the Aztecs.
Did you make that upset pick just so you could ramrod this factoid that you had probably that got edited out of Final Thoughts?
No, I actually had trouble finding an upset. And, because the game starts at 11:50, I was going through the whole schedule. And finally at 11:59 p.m., I found one I liked.
Well, I like actually finding a good note and jamming it into our podcast in one way, shape, or form. So good for you, Stu, and good for Hawaii. Listen, hey, weird stuff happens at Hawaii. So I think that's a good pick.
At least most people got to watch that game last Saturday because it was on CBS Sports Network.
Good point.
That's true. All right. As always, we will be hitting your mailbag questions in Thursday's episode. So send your questions to the audiblepod@gmail.com. One of you will be the lucky winner of a $12 Trader Joe's gift card. We'll see you then.